it going, everyone, and welcome in for a midweek edition of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. Some really good games on Wednesday as we start to hit the final stretch of the non-conference schedules. So we're going to talk about some of those key matchups. Bradley against USF, the Dons hitting the road after the big win against Loyola. And then also going to talk about Washington State heading cross-state to take on the Huskies of Washington, renewing that old Pac-12 rivalry. So we'll see that matchup on Wednesday as well. Also going to talk about, at this stage, what maybe some of the player of the year candidates are looking like at this stage. There are definitely a handful that are starting to break through the rest of the pack. So we'll talk a little bit about that and where we're starting to see some of this go as the season goes, as we get into WCC play. But one note I did want to start on, because I do want to make sure that I'm giving credit to where credit is due. And right now, I do want to talk a little bit about Pepperdine, because this is a team that has played a lot better as of late. They are 5-6 right now, but they've won 4 of their last 5 games. The game against Northern Arizona, which obviously not a great team the other night, but they had some really good individual performances in that contest. Boubacar Coulibaly with 22 points, 10 for 10 from the field. Mo Odom with 20 points, 8 assists. He's been one of the better assist guys in the WCC all year long. Last 5 games, he's been 12.8 points, 8.4 assists, 56% from 3. And Stefan Todorovic, who mentioned a couple of times throughout the course of the season, has had a really good season coming over from USF. He had 19 the other night. He's averaging 18.9 per game, which is still the best in the WCC. So we're seeing some really positive things out of Pepperdine, because they're starting at least looking more of a competent team. And I think from what we saw a year ago, that is a huge step in the right direction. So this is a Pepperdine team that is playing well. I think I'm going to tip my cap to them, because they've done a much better job of looking much more cohesive in the latter half of the non-conference slate. So Pepperdine also will be hosting Long Beach on Thursday, so another opportunity for them to kind of add on to what's been a pretty nice non-conference for them to this point. So I want to dive into who I think some of these player of the year candidates are. We have enough information under our belt, about a month and a half, that we can now see what this league is going to look like, and who are some of the stars that have emerged from the pack on a lot of these teams. And first and foremost is the guy I picked to be player of the year in Ryan Nembhard. We've talked about him kind of endlessly over the course of the first month and a half. He's averaging 11 points. He's leading the nation in assists at 10.3. His shooting numbers aren't great. 41% from the field, 37% from 3, which is actually, that part is pretty good. But that 41% overall from the field is not a great number to kind of see. But Nembhard overall, he's leading what is Gonzaga through arguably one of the best, if not the best, non-conference schedules in the country. He's had some really big games in these stretches, and he's continued to be the best distributor, the best leader of an offense that we have seen to this point in college basketball. Again, that 10.3 assists is not an accident, and he has just continued to get better and better, even though there have been moments where we're kind of wanting to see him maybe do a little bit more in closing situations. We haven't quite seen that all the time. So some room for improvement for Nembhard as we go into the latter half of the season. But to this point, Nembhard is definitely among those candidates I'm taking a look at for WCC Player of the Year. Another one, and I slightly mentioned it in the previous episode, that someone who has emerged in this group is Malik Thomas. And we've seen a couple of really big performances from him over the course of the year. He had a really good game against Memphis. He had another great outing against Loyola just the other night, 35 points. He's averaging 18.6 per game. He's averaging 2.2 steals. He's shooting 50% from the field. He's coming up in some of the bigger moments for the Dons. for a team that really needed someone to make that next step and kind of fill in that leadership gap that I think that this team maybe was missing a year ago. Even though that Jonathan Mobo stepped in and was obviously their best player a year ago, it still felt like in crunch time that they were missing someone who could really kind of take over a ball game, and that has turned into Malik Thomas this season. He's definitely on my short list for WCC Player of the Year. Another member from another team who has been a bit of a surprise to this point. Maybe not necessarily the individual player has been a surprise, but the team I think has played much better than many people thought, and that's Oregon State, and that's Michael Rataj. Rataj, 16 points, 8 rebounds, two steals, over a block a game, 49% from the field, 37% from three-point range. He's filling up the stat sheet, and he's doing it on a team that is winning. They're 8-2 going into the Diamond Head Classic, and he continues to be one of the reasons why this team is so successful on the offensive end and on the defensive end. He gives them a lot of versatility. He's going to continue to be that as we get deeper into conference play. And he's going to be a load for a lot of teams who are going to have, I think, a tough time matching up with him on the defensive end. Santa Clara's not great on that defensive end on that front. I think like Gonzaga's post defense is hit and miss from time to time. USF, depending on the condition of Duito Newberry, is also going to be a bit of a concern on the defensive front. So there are definitely going to be some challenges that a lot of teams are going to face having to match up with Rataj as the season continues to move on. And he's going to be in that hunt. He's going to be in the race because Oregon State has shown that they're going to continue to play well. That game against Irvine really, I think, helped solidify that this is a team that you do have to watch out for and have to pay attention to. And Rataj is going to be in the center of all of that. One more that is kind of like separated to me from everybody else, although the numbers are still kind of getting up there and still need to, I think, get better to get really into the conversation. That's Elijah Mahi from Santa Clara. He's averaging 13.2 and 4.5 rebounds. But the one thing is, like, we're waiting to see for that to be more consistent, but his best games have become against the best opponents. 23 against Bradley, 19 against Washington, 22 against Nevada, 16 against North Dakota State, 19 against ASU. He's showing up in the bigger moments, and for a team that really needed somebody to step up, he has been that guy, and he's been that in critical times when they haven't had much offense from various spots. He has hit the ground running, moving over to Division I, and this has been maybe one of the better transfers within the WCC all season long, and he could very well end up being WCC Player of the Year. And then the other two I think I have on my list, but I'm still kind of questioning the consistency and whether or not they're going to break through numbers-wise, are Graham Ike and Augustus Marciulionis, who honestly were probably 1-2 in the WCC Player of the Year rankings last year. Many people thought Ike should have been the Player of the Year, and Marciulionis was the Player of the Year. So looking at these two, like Marciulionis, like 14.7, 0.6 assists. He's leading St. Mary's in both those categories for a team that is 9-2. So that's definitely going to carry some weight as it did last year. Ike, 14.6 rebounds, but his continued problem this year has been not only his foul trouble, but there have been moments where he has vanished in games. And this is a little bit more of a concerning trend after the UConn game, where he played all of 12 minutes and really was a non-factor in that game. So if he can get back to what we saw a year ago, like, yes, he's going to be in the conversation for Player of the Year. But if he continues to be this inconsistent player that we have seen through the course of the non-conference, that's going to be a taller order. Also, I do think that the Gonzaga players are going to be harder pressed to get Player of the Year, only because I think it's going to be more balanced in what they do. It's not going to be one player here, one player there that's completely dominating. This is going to be a balanced attack. I mean, you could even throw Caleb Battle in that group if you want to think about guys who could end up putting up big numbers once you get to league play and separate themselves. But if we're saying 3 Gonzaga players are there, they could end up separating the votes just in and amongst themselves. And with Marshall Lonis, it's a matter of, are we going to see him put up the numbers? Is St. Mary's going to be consistent enough throughout the course of conference play, which is going to be tougher this year? But also, could we see a back-to-back player of the year? I mean, I don't think I'd have to go back and look to see when the last time we saw a back-to-back player of the year award going to anyone, let alone a St. Mary's player going back-to-back. So, I mean, if he were to actually break through and do that again, I think that says a lot about him and says a lot about what St. Mary's will have done in WCC play. But as of right now, like those two who maybe were the leading candidates a year ago are further down the list than at this point a year ago. All right, so we're going to move on and talk about, again, the 2 big matchups that are happening Wednesday. Washington State taking on Washington, and then also we have USF hitting the road and playing at Bradley. Obviously, Bradley's already played a couple WCC teams, including Washington State. So we're going to start with talking about Washington State and Washington, because obviously old Pac-12 rivalry. This is going to be probably a game that these two are going to try to play against each other in the non-conference for the foreseeable future, or at least I think that's what a lot of people are hoping, that they continue this old cross-state rivalry. And this is a team in Washington that has already played a WCC team once and did pick up a win. They beat Santa Clara at the Acrisure in the championship game of that tournament. And the one thing that really kind of challenged USF, which I think is going to be a challenge for Washington State as well, is going to be the front court. And that is really kind of headed up by Great Osabor. 14 points, nearly 9 rebounds, 3.7 assists. He's going to really be he's a versatile big man who's going to be able to pass out of the post. He's going to really kind of test the physicality of this front line for the Cougars. So this is, again, like I don't think this is necessarily one guy for Washington State that's going to be able to kind of take on this load. I think we're going to see a little bit of a committee on who's going to take turns guarding him. I could actually see Ndie Okafor taking getting a few more minutes because of this matchup. This also is a matchup that marks the return of Nate Calmise going back to Washington, which is where he was a season ago. He didn't get a ton of playing time last year, but he has been one of the better guards on the West Coast to this point of the season. 15.5 points, 4.5 assists. And the backcourt of Calmise and Isaiah Watts recently have been very good. Watts has had a couple of really good performances, including a really solid performance against Missouri State on Saturday. So we're starting to see a number of the Washington State pieces really kind of come into form and really start to play well. And of course, this was something we thought we were going to see. Well, we thought we were going to see this maybe down the road, but I think this Washington State team is ahead of schedule on where we thought they would be. 9-2 coming into this one. They're 2-0 away from home. We know this is a team that already has some really good wins, and this Washington game is going to provide another quad 2 opportunity for them to add to their resume. Washington State is one of only 3 WCC teams with 3 quad 1, quad 2 victories, the other 2 being Gonzaga and Santa Clara. So Washington has set themselves up well in the non-conference. This is another opportunity to add on to what they have already built. Now, some of the metrics don't really like Washington State all that much, but the one thing is that the eye test and the wins that they are picking up are telling a different story. They're getting good wins. They're doing it in convincing fashion in a lot of ways. Again, like you think about, they were up 20 on Boise, up 20 on Nevada at Nevada. They've had some really, really good performances as of late. And this is all without Cedric Howard for the rest of the season. They've been without him since Thanksgiving week. And this is a team that has rallied. This is a team that has clearly shown its depth. And we're starting to see maybe other stars emerge. Nate Calmes being one of those. I think Lawan Watts is also another one of those who is starting to kind of step into a larger role and really starting to show some more and more of his potential. I really like Washington State in this game. I think that Washington is going to be really challenged on the backcourt against this Washington State team. And the number of weapons that Washington State can kind of throw at you is going to be a challenge. I mean, this team is going to run up the score. This is what they have done all season long. And I do think this is going to play at their pace, because that's another thing that Washington State has been very good about to this point in the season, is forcing you to play their up-tempo style. It's been very kind of rare that we've seen them kind of have to slow it down, even though recently they have been much better defensively. They were really good defensively against Nevada, really good defensively against Boise, good defensively against Missouri State. We're starting to see that side of it come along as well. So going into this contest, I mean, I like Washington State. I know like the betting line has Washington as the favorite, 2.5 point favorite, but really that's the home advantage there. But this is a building that this squad is very familiar with playing in. And there's not going to be any level of concern, I think, from this Cougar crowd go on the road and play it's not going to be so much a hostile environment at Washington, because the students are gone right now. So this actually might be the perfect opportunity to get a big win, and get out of Seattle with another key victory. Now I turn it over to USF and Bradley. These two are in somewhat similar situations, but coming off of very different results. Bradley is coming into this one at 8-2. They're coming off a loss to Santa Clara on Saturday, and USF is coming off of a win against Loyola up in Milwaukee, and they are 9-2, but they are now straddled with a potential critical injury. And it wasn't on camera, but the reports coming out that Duito Newberry did suffer an injury. He did only play 14 minutes in the ball game. We don't know much else other than that at this stage. We don't know if he's going to miss time. We don't know if he does, how long it will be. So that is one piece to really kind of watch for in this matchup, because that is their best post defender. That is one of their more dynamic players on the offensive end as well. If he's out for an extended period of time, this is a big blow for the Dons, but we at least have started to see some level of guys who can step up into that role. And we saw that on Sunday against Loyola. Barry Wang stepped into that role. We saw Abosi also step into that and be able to give them good minutes as well. And I think we're going to need to see more of that for USF. But really the key for USF is their guards and the defense that this team has been able to play. Malik Thomas, already mentioned, like, he has been great all season long. He came up big just the other night with 35. And this is another one of those games where you would expect to see Thomas have a big night. Because he steps up in the biggest moments. He's the guy that we're going to see down the stretch really take over ball games. I wouldn't expect much different I would expect definitely like he to be the focus in the second half. He to kind of want to take charge and really lead this team on down the stretch, which is something that USF has needed. They needed someone to really take command and turn into the go-to guy down as they get into crunch time. And Thomas has filled that role really well as of late. Ryan Beasley playing well as of late as well. That's another critical piece. We saw a year ago how much different this team looked when Beasley played well and when Beasley was also kind of causing chaos on the floor. Really good freshman campaign. We're starting to see more of what we saw a year ago now, which is a very good sign for USF. It has felt like it's taken him some time to kind of get back into that rhythm and get back into kind of finding his role of what that's going to be as he is in his second season with the Dons. And now, the one thing is defensively, this team has done a really good job over the course of the whole season. This is one of the better defensive teams in the WCC. And a lot of that has been about their length and their versatility. And that goes to Carlton Lingard and what he's able to bring you, what Tyrone Riley can do, what the backcourt can do with Marcus Williams. Like, there's a lot of pieces that the Dons can move interchangeably on the defensive end, and they're going to need that against this Bradley team, the first thing that they're going to do is this is a very good three-point shooting team. You're going to have to chase them off the three-point line and really force them to do something else other than shoot from distance. They shot it well against Santa Clara, and one of the reasons Santa Clara won that game is just they shot better from three. Now, Santa Clara is not a very good defensive team on defending the three. USF is far better at that, so I would expect that to be one of the cases going into Wednesday's matchup, is that USF is going to do a much better job defending the three-point line. That said, it's like there are a number of guys who are going to be threats out there. Duke Dean, Zach Montgomery, Almar Atlason, all these guys are very good three-point shooters, and they're going to be essentially matchup problems when you think about like how you're going to be able to balance playing inside against Darius Hannah, and then what you're going to be able to do outside with the plethora of guards that are going to be hoisting up threes for this squad. So guarding the three-point line is the critical point for the Dons. I'm actually pretty confident that's going to not be a huge issue. The issue is going to be, are they going to rebound enough? Are they going to be able to play good enough interior defense to get a road win against a good Bradley squad that is right now probably hungry for a win against a WCC team, as they are 0-2 going into the matchup on Wednesday. All right, well, that'll do it for this episode of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, follow along on social media at PostByZach and at unofficial WCC pod. Also, remember, we've added Blue Sky. I've added some of the other channels as well. So be sure to check that out on whichever social media platform you are following. All right. That'll do it. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you later.